Welcome back to the Deep Dive. This is where we take all the research, the articles, and the notes you send our way, and we really try to turn that complex information into, well, knowledge you can actually use.
And today we are definitely drilling down into something I think everyone can relate to, but it's incredibly subtle. It's the psychology of advanced communication.
Exactly. We're past the basics here. Our listener, and you know who you are, you've mastered the grammar, you have the vocabulary.
Right.
So the mission for this deep dive, based on the material you sent, is to figure out how to move beyond just, functional language.
Getting your point across.
Yeah, getting your point across and moving towards speaking with, well, real authority, eloquence, and maybe most importantly, with ease.
And the sources you shared, they pinpoint the exact barrier that gets in the way of that final leap to, let's say, C2 mastery, especially for people in these really high-stakes environments.
And it's not what you'd think. It isn't a lack of words. It's when you have all the tools, linguistically speaking, but the human machinery just seizes up.
It jams. And the core barrier is something we all know, social anxiety, specifically in communication settings.
It's such a persistent problem, isn't it? It can be, well, insidious.
It really can. And the source material has a great definition for it. It calls it the pervasive apprehension regarding negative evaluation in social settings.
Okay, well, let's break that down.
It's that constant nagging fear under the surface that when you open your mouth, the person you're talking to is immediately going to start scrutinizing, correcting, or judging you.
And what's really fascinating, and the sources spend a lot of time on this, is that this fear isn't just a mental thing. It's not just in your head. It's physical.
Oh, absolutely. They call it the somatic response, and we've all felt it. Your heart starts beating a little faster.
Yep, the hands get a bit clammy.
And all of a sudden, that perfectly organized filing cabinet of words you have in your brain just slams shut. You can't access anything.
That's the momentary cognitive fog they talk about.
Exactly. That panic, that rush of adrenaline, it literally hijacks the cognitive resources you need for language. You know the word. You've used it 1,000 times before, but in that high-pressure moment, poof, it's gone.
But here's the part that gets really, really interesting for the advanced learner, because they aren't, an intermediate speaker who's just struggling to find any verb.
No, not at all. They're dealing with a compounding factor that makes this whole thing so much more acute.
What is that?
Well, they're fluent enough to know what excellent sounds like.
Yeah.
They have the ear for it. And so they feel this immense pressure to produce that same level of excellence, but, instantly.
So they're managing two things at once.
Exactly. They're managing their social image. Do I sound professional? Do I sound like I belong here? And at the same time, they're monitoring their own linguistic accuracy.
Because they're fluent enough to be judged on their fluency. That's a great way to put it.
Right. And it's that dual processing, the social performance check, plus the constant error monitoring, that creates the fog, especially when you have to talk to someone you don't know or someone you see as high status.
It's like trying to run two really heavy programs on a computer at the same time. Everything slows down, you start to stutter, and you risk a total system crash.
A perfect analogy. So, with that in mind, we have a very clear agenda for today. Based on the scenarios you provided, we are going to dissect 3 distinct high-stakes situations.
And for each one, we're going to give you some sophisticated, really battle-tested linguistic strategies to navigate them with poise.
We'll be covering professional integration, then academic networking, and finally, the art of what's called phatic communion.
Or, as most of us know it, small talk.
The dreaded small talk, yes.
All right, let's dive into the deep end first, the professional environment.
The corporate challenge. This is a critical place to start.
Okay, section 1. The corporate challenge projecting accessibility. So let's paint the picture. You've landed that amazing competitive job. You're an advanced speaker. You walk into a new corporate office.
And everyone is just buzzing. They're already operating to full capacity. The atmosphere is super industrious. And you feel like the odd one out, the person who hasn't earned their stripes yet.
Right. And the sources say our first instinct, our temptation, is to just pull back, to be quiet, observe, and wait.
And that temptation makes sense. It feels safe. But pragmatically, in the real world, it's a flawed strategy.
Why is that?
Because waiting in a fast-paced environment doesn't signal thoughtfulness. It can be misread as hesitancy or a lack of confidence, maybe even disinterest.
So the advanced strategy is actually the opposite of what feels safe.
It's counterintuitive, yes.
Yeah.
You have to project accessibility right away. You need to establish rapport that goes beyond just a functional, hello, I'm new.
We have to elevate that verbal baseline immediately. The sources mention starting with the nonverbal cue, a smile, but I mean, that's just the entry fee. We need the specific language that comes next.
Language that invites engagement. That's the key phrase. It doesn't just announce your presence, it invites a connection.
So what's the difference? Give me an example.
Okay, so an intermediate speaker might default to something transactional like, hello, I am the new hire. Where is my desk?
Very functional, gets the job done.
It does. But the sophisticated approach, which our material suggests, is something like, good morning. I believe I'm the newest addition to the team. I'm looking forward to getting up to speed.
Okay, let's stop right there and dissect that. Getting up to speed. The sources call this an excellent idiom. Why is that one so potent? I mean, not all idioms are good in a professional setting.
That is a fantastic point. Its power is all in the subtext, in what it implies. Let's say as the new person, I say something like, I'm excited to start learning the ropes.
Okay. Seems friendly enough.
It is. But it suggests you need scaffolding, you need mentorship, you might need a slower pace to start. It puts the burden of training you squarely on the team.
And in that busy, industrious atmosphere you mentioned, that just slows the whole machine down.
Precisely. Now, contrast that. When you say, I'm looking forward to getting up to speed, you're using a metaphor from machinery, from velocity.
Right, I get it.
It implies two things that are highly valued in that kind of environment. First, competence. You're saying you already have the basic skills to operate.
And second,
deference to the team's efficiency. You're showing that you respect their pace and you're ready to accelerate your own onboarding so you don't become a drag on the system.
So it's a linguistic shortcut. It conveys competence and your intent to integrate all in one go. And that has to help with the anxiety because you're immediately signaling that you belong there, that you can handle the pace.
It's a huge mitigator.
Yeah.
And this connects directly to the second powerful phrase we pulled from the sources for these first meetings.
Which is, put a face to the name.
Yes. The full line being something like, it's a pleasure to finally put a face to the name.
This feels like a really advanced pragmatic move.
It is. Because it implies you were aware of them beforehand. Even if it's just a name on an email chain or someone mentioned in a Zoom call. Using that phrase suggests the relationship isn't starting from zero.
Right, you're not starting from a cold introduction.
You're implying there was already some kind of connection, even a tiny one, and this meeting is just confirming it. It's solidifying something that already existed.
You're essentially creating a little bit of shared history, even if it's artificial. It just completely sidesteps the awkwardness of a cold approach.
Exactly. And, just as important as knowing what to avoid saying.
Yeah.
For an advanced learner, that's half the battle.
Okay, good point. So what are the traps?
You want to avoid any language that signals you're expecting a lot of downtime or hand-holding. Things like, I'll need some time to settle in, or, God forbid, something too casual like, I'm just chilling today while I wait for my computer setup.
Yeah, that would not go over well. So beyond getting up to speed, what are some other good proactive phrases the listener should have in their back pocket?
You want things that convey proactive engagement. So, I'm ready to hit the ground running is another classic. Or, if you need information, frame it as wanting to join in, like, could you bring me into the loop on the X project?
I see. So it's all about framing yourself as an active participant from minute one, not a passive person waiting for instructions.
That's the goal. In the professional world, it's about conversational efficiency and signaling a high-energy collaborative mindset. It's a great way to manage those first impression nerves because you demonstrate your capability before you've even had to prove it with your actual work.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Now let's pivot completely. We're leaving the structured corporate world and heading into a very different high-stakes environment.
An environment driven by ideas and critique.
Section 2, Forging Alliances, Navigating the Academic Environment.
The scene here is a seminar room, a lecture hall. The goal isn't just to learn, it's to forge intellectual alliances with your peers. These are people you might collaborate with, study with, debate with for years.
And the learner's hesitation here is totally different. It's not about being efficient. It's the deep-seated fear that whatever you say, your contributions won't be intellectually rigorous enough.
Yes, the fear of sounding simple in a space that's dedicated to complexity.
So the strategy has to be different.
It pivots dramatically. In the corporate world, we projected competence. Here, in an academic peer setting, the advanced strategy is to leverage shared predicaments.
Shared predicaments.
Yeah, and the sources are, I think, brilliant on this point. They explain that vulnerability can be an incredibly powerful icebreaker among peers.
Okay, that feels counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Why would I want to show a weakness in a place where everyone is trying to seem smart?
Because it's a shortcut to establishing relatable humanity. Think about it. In these dense academic programs, your peers are almost certainly grappling with the exact same difficult material, the same stress, the same insane reading list.
So by saying this is hard, you're actually just stating a shared reality.
You are. You're articulating their struggle, and in doing so, you validate it. And you connect through that shared difficulty instead of trying to one-up each other intellectually.
So this requires moving beyond the obvious. The source material contrasts a really simple question like, is this Sociology 401?
Right, which just signals you couldn't be bothered to check the room number.
With initiating contact by referencing the shared context. So commenting on the syllabus, the professor's reputation, the reading.
Exactly. And let's look at the actual language suggested in the role play from the source. It starts with a very simple, polite gateway.
It's a functional request to lower the tension?
The warm-up, yes. Excuse me, do you mind if I occupy this seat? It's low stakes, basic politeness. But the key is the immediate transition that follows.
I must admit, I'm slightly apprehensive about the workload for this semester.
Let's focus on that word choice. Apprehensive. It's so deliberate. Why not just say nervous or worried?
I was just about to ask that.
Well, for two main reasons. First, apprehensive is a more formal academic word, so it fits the high register of the setting. It maintains your linguistic credibility.
Okay.
But second, and this is the crucial part, using that specific word is an invitation. It opens the door for a real connection, and it brings up this key concept of the affective filter.
Ah, yes, the affective filter. This is a technical term, so I think we should probably spend a moment unpacking that for our listener.
Absolutely. So the affective filter is a concept from second language acquisition. It's basically the psychological barrier made up of emotions, stress, fear, self-consciousness that gets in the way of you both taking in and producing language.
It's what causes the cognitive fog we talked about earlier.
It's the trigger for it.
Yeah.
When that filter is high, your communication is stilted, you get nervous, and you basically stop learning or communicating effectively.
So by starting the conversation with this articulated vulnerability, I'm slightly apprehensive, what are you actually doing to that filter?
You're lowering your own, and you're signaling to the other person that it's safe for them to lower theirs too. You've just built a little bridge of shared vulnerability.
I see.
And when you use sophisticated vocabulary to admit that something is difficult, you make it easy for them to respond in a similar way with similar high-level language. They might say, I completely concur. It does seem rather daunting, doesn't it?
Or something like, I've been trying to wrestle with this reading list myself.
And just like that, the entire focus of the conversation shifts. It's no longer about my performance. Am I saying this right? Do I sound smart enough?
It becomes about the shared external challenge, the thing you're both up against.
That is the core strategy. By focusing on the daunting external problem, the curriculum, the professor, the sheer volume of reading, neither of you is focused on how the other person is forming their sentences. You're bonding.
You're bonding over a shared struggle, which is one of the most powerful ways to build a real relationship.
You've used high-level language, not for transferring data, but for creating a deep emotional, social connection.
So what if you want to talk about the content itself, not just how hard it is? What are some good, sophisticated ways to open that door?
The key is to use language that invites interpretation, not just a yes or no answer. Avoid closed questions.
Give me an example.
You could try something like, the professor's thesis on topic X seems to presuppose a great deal about concept Y. What are your initial impressions on that foundational assumption?
Wow, okay, that is definitely high level.
It is, but even something simpler works. I'm still trying to get my head around the implications of the second reading. Which part resonated most strongly with you?
Phrases like presuppose a great deal or the implications of, they signal you're thinking critically. It establishes your credibility right away.
It does. It shows you're engaging with a nuance, not just a surface-level summary. And, ironically, using this approach actually requires confidence, but the payoff is huge.
Yeah.
You get genuine peer bonds, you get less anxiety because the focus is off of you, and you get intellectual respect. It just completely flips the anxiety script.
All right, let's shift gears again. We're moving to the one area that I think trips up even the most advanced speakers because it feels so trivial, but it's so fundamental.
Section 3. The lubricant of society. Mastering phatic communion.
we have to define that term properly. Phatic communication.
It's the linguistic term for speech that's used mainly to create or maintain social bonds, not to convey specific transactional information.
Yeah.
It's the how are you, the nice day, the filler.
It's small talk, and everyone claims to hate small talk, but the sources are so right when they call it the critical lubricant of social interaction.
You can't just jump into a high-stakes negotiation without it. You have to prime the social engine first. You need to establish that basic, comfortable social contract.
Okay, so since we're talking about advanced learners, we have to talk about the ultimate cliche of small talk, the weather.
You have to. It's a classic for a reason. It's a shared, neutral reality. It's a perfect, safe starting point. But the advanced speaker has to do it differently. You have to avoid those robotic, low-level statements.
Like, it is sunny, or it is cold.
Conversational dead ends. They offer nowhere to go.
So what does the advanced speaker do instead?
They use that shared reality not to state a fact, but to seek consensus. And they do this using tag questions. This is a subtle but really powerful C2 level skill.
Okay, show me how a tag question can transform a boring observation into a social collaboration.
So instead of the flat statement, it's quite a mild day, you invite agreement. You say, it's quite a mild day for November, wouldn't you agree?
I see. Or, ideally, we'd have a bit more sun today, wouldn't we?
Yes, that little tag at the end, wouldn't we? Or don't you think it's like a social key? It unlocks the door. It forces a response that's more than just yes. It says, I'm seeking a shared opinion with you.
So the goal isn't meteorological reporting, it's building rapport.
That's it, exactly. And this is where we get into what the sources call C2 level small talk, because an advanced speaker has to use descriptive, idiomatic vocabulary to elevate even a boring topic like the weather. This is what separates fluency from true mastery.
Okay, let's look at the specific examples from the source material. They were about commuting in bad weather. The words were torrential, deluge, and the phrase fingers crossed.
Let's analyze the precision there. I could say, it's raining really hard. That's functional.
D1 level, maybe?
Right. But if I say the downpour this morning was absolutely torrential, or I call the storm a deluge, I'm showing a mastery of a more formal, high-impact lexicon that still fits perfectly in a casual chat. The person listening processes that word choice subconsciously as a sign of high skill.
You're picking the most evocative word you can, which proves your vocabulary retrieval is fast and precise even when there's zero pressure.
And it goes beyond just description. You have to integrate idioms naturally. Let's take fingers crossed. I could say, I hope the train comes soon. Fine.
Intentional.
But if I say, with this weather, I've just got my fingers crossed that the commute home isn't too dreadful, what have I done?
You've shifted the conversation from just describing the past, the rain, to a shared, hopeful prediction about a potential future problem. We're injecting a bit of humanity and shared optimism.
It's a social sweetener. It signals effortless, idiomatic fluency. You sound expressive, articulate, natural. It proves your fluency no matter how trivial the topic is.
So mastering small talk actually requires a kind of lightness, maybe even a theatricality, that advanced learners often suppress because they're so focused on perfect grammar.
That's a great way to put it. It often requires more linguistic agility to handle small talk well than it does to discuss some complex theory.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Because small talk demands spontaneity, cultural nuance, and the ability to be expressive. If you could talk about a traffic jam with humor and descriptive flair and the right idioms, you've pretty much achieved linguistic mastery.
The significance of this nuance is huge then. This kind of vocabulary in this context signals C2 proficiency because it shows you can be articulate and socially integrated in absolutely any conversational situation.
And that transition from the external tactics of what to say to the internal management of how you feel is so important.
It is. We've covered the what, but now we have to talk about the how. How do we actually manage the internal mechanism? Section 4, the internal game mitigating anxiety and refining delivery. How do we break that cognitive fog when we feel the pressure building?
Okay, we need specific, actionable strategies that go to the root cause, which is that physical stress response. The first one is strategy A, cognitive reframing.
This is the critical mental shift the sources talk about. Moving your perspective from viewing an interaction as a performance or an exam to seeing it as just a connection. Why is that one change so powerful?
Well, the performance mindset demands perfection. It's a pass-fail situation. If you see it as an exam, any tiny mistake feels like a failure, and that triggers the stress.
But the connection mindset.
The connection mindset prioritizes empathy, understanding, and shared humanity. It forces you to focus on the other person, not on yourself.
So if my goal is, what do I need to understand about this person instead of, am I pronouncing this word right? I'm taking the pressure off myself.
You immediately relieve the pressure. When your focus is on making a connection, you naturally start to believe that the other person is focused on your message, the content, not on grading your grammar. Their goal is meaning, not perfect syntax. That shift alone can tear down a huge part of the performance anxiety.
And that leads us right into strategy B, which is about tackling the immediate physical symptoms, the fast heart rate, the shallow breathing, physiological regulation.
Yes, through deep diaphragmatic breathing. And this isn't just, some soft suggestion to just relax. This is grounded in hard science, which the sources detail really well.
Let's get into that science. It's all about stimulating the vagus nerve. What is that, and how does it help me find the right word?
The vagus nerve is the longest cranial nerve in your body. It's like the main communication highway running from your brainstem down to your abdomen, connecting your gut, heart, and brain. Crucially, it's the primary activator of your parasympathetic nervous system.
That's the rest and digest system, right? The opposite of fight or flight.
Exactly. So when you take those deep, slow, controlled breaths, you are physically sending a signal of safety up the vagus nerve to your brain. You are telling your nervous system to calm down.
And when the system calms down, what happens to the stress hormones like cortisol?
They drop dramatically. Cortisol is great if you need to run from a tiger, but it's a disaster for complex cognitive tasks like speaking another language.
Why is that? What does it do to the brain?
When cortisol floods your system, it specifically impairs the functions of the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex, the exact brain regions you need for working memory and retrieving stored vocabulary and grammar.
So when an advanced learner says, I know the word, I just can't access it, that's literally cortisol hijacking their brain.
That's exactly what's happening. So diaphragmatic breathing is essentially a biohack for conversational fluency. Taking just 3 deliberate deep breaths before you walk into a big meeting is a physical strategy to lower your cortisol, clear that cognitive fog, and get clean, quick access to your entire linguistic arsenal.
It's like clearing the cache on your linguistic hard drive. It's not a nice to do, it's an essential pre-communication task.
It's essential system maintenance. Which brings us to the final internal strategy, strategy C, embracing reality. We have to champion what's called communicative competence over grammatical perfection.
This means we need to get comfortable with the idea that real-time speech is messy.
It is. Advanced learners often have this impossible ideal in their head that their speech should sound like a perfectly edited, pre-written essay. But natural, spontaneous speech, even from highly educated native speakers, is full of filler words, pauses, self-corrections.
Yeah, if a native speaker stumbles and says, I was going to the store, and wait, no, I meant the library, nobody thinks they're incompetent.
Of course not. It's a natural feature of communication, not a failure of it. The moment you give yourself permission to stumble and self-correct, you reduce the pressure for flawless delivery, which paradoxically usually leads to much smoother, more natural communication. The goal is connection, not perfection.
Okay, so we've worked on the internal game. Now let's get into the final area of refinement. Section 5. This is about the subtle mistakes that even highly proficient speakers make.
These aren't grammar mistakes. They're pragmatic errors. Errors in social appropriateness. So pragmatic precision, avoiding common proficiency traps.
And these are tricky because you're not breaking a rule in a textbook.
No, you're violating a cultural expectation you might not even know exists. And the first classic one is the literal trap, being too factual or literal in your responses.
The case study for this in the sources is the classic "how are you" response. In a lot of English-speaking cultures, just answering "I am fine" can come across as abrupt or even dismissive.
Right, because in many contexts, "how are you" is not a genuine medical inquiry.
No.
It's a phatic greeting. It's a social ritual. It's designed to open the channel for conversation. And responding with a stark, factual "I am fine," especially with a flat tone, basically shuts that channel right back down.
It's the answer you give when you want someone to go away. It has no warmth.
Done. So the fluent alternatives use hedging, idioms, and a bit of positivity. The sources give some great examples. I can't complain, plodding along, or things are ticking along nicely, thanks.
Let's break down. I can't complain. That one is so common. What makes it such a smooth, high-level response?
It's beautifully calibrated. It implies that, okay, maybe life isn't perfect, but on the whole, things are good. You recognize that. It's a humble way of acknowledging your well-being without sounding like you're bragging. It just fits almost anywhere, casually or professionally.
And plodding along. That one has a bit of humor to it, a bit of self-deprecation.
It does. It suggests you're making steady progress, maybe with some effort, but you're getting there. It creates this gentle sense of a shared human struggle, which can be a really powerful way to connect.
And things are ticking along nicely. It just feels a bit more upbeat and efficient.
Exactly. Like clockwork. All of these add a social texture that I am fine, just can't. They signal deep cultural competence, not just linguistic skill.
Okay, what's the second proficiency trap?
It's the overuse of really complex, heavy sentence structures, specifically a phenomenon called nominalization.
Okay. This happens when learners have mastered formal, written English and then try to just speak it out loud.
That's the trap. Nominalization is when you turn verbs or adjectives into nouns. So instead of saying, we implemented the plan, you say, the implementation of the plan.
It just sounds so heavy and academic, stilted.
It sounds like bureaucratic jargon. Fluent speakers prefer strong, active verbs. They'd say, we decided to implement the strategy quickly. The person falling into the trap might say, the quick execution of the implementation strategy was the subject of the decision.
It's passive and just unnatural in a conversation. So the advice is use strong verbs.
Use strong verbs. Avoid the heavy, abstract nouns in spontaneous speech. Save them for your formal writing.
Excellent. The third trap is something you touched on earlier, the strategic use of ellipsis, where fluency is shown by what you confidently leave out.
Ellipsis, omitting words that are understood from the context, is such a key marker of advanced fluency. It shows your brain is processing so quickly that it doesn't need to construct every single sentence in its full grammatical form. It takes shortcuts.
Right, so a full sentence like, yes, this is my portfolio, sounds very deliberate, very careful. It almost signals that the speaker might still be translating in their head.
Absolutely. The more natural, fluent responses are much shorter. It is, or just right. Or the very sophisticated single-word confirmation, indeed.
Let's talk about the power of indeed.
Indeed is a potent, formal confirmation. It signals not just that you agree, but that you have confidence and mastery over the situation. It cuts through all the excess words and conveys immediate authority. The brevity itself signals confidence.
Okay, and the final trap for us to cover.
Managing direct versus indirect requests. This is a huge pragmatic pitfall, especially across different professional cultures.
So being too direct, like saying, pass me the report now.
In some English-speaking environments, that can sound aggressive, even rude. Advanced speakers have to master this gradient of indirectness, using softening language.
So you avoid the direct command and instead use hedges or questions about their ability to do it.
Exactly. Instead of send me the data, a socially calibrated speaker says, would you mind sending over the data when you have a moment? Or, I wonder if you could possibly look into that for me.
So using words like could or would and phrases like I wonder if, they aren't signs of weakness.
Not at all. They are signs of social respect and high-level pragmatic skill. They make the request easier to fulfill because you're giving the other person a polite way to say no or to defer it without anyone losing face.
This whole section really drives home that C2 proficiency isn't just about what you know grammatically. It's about what you know culturally and pragmatically.
It's the elegant economy of language combined with cultural empathy. That is the final frontier.
Okay, we have covered so much ground today. From the deep psychology of anxiety to these really specific C2 level phrases and traps, let's try to pull it all together in a summary of core takeaways.
Absolutely. We started by stressing the need to elevate your greetings, to move them from being purely functional to being relational.
That means using professional idioms like getting up to speed or put a face to the name to project accessibility right from the start.
Then, in the academic world, we talked about that counterintuitive but powerful strategy of using shared predicaments.
Right. Articulating your challenges with sophisticated words like apprehensive or daunting to lower that affective filter and build real bonds with your peers.
From there, we mastered the art of small talk. We learned to avoid those conversational dead ends by using tag questions to seek consensus and using descriptive words like torrential to signal sophistication, even in the most trivial exchanges.
And on the internal side of things, we championed cognitive reframing, seeing conversations as connections, not as performances.
Yeah, and we used the hard science of diaphragmatic breathing, stimulating the vagus nerve to reduce that cortisol spike and get back our cognitive access to all the words we know are in there.
Finally, we worked on pragmatic precision, moving away from that abrupt literalism of I am fine towards nuanced idiomatic responses like I can't complain.
And avoiding the heaviness of nominalization, and instead mastering ellipsis, an indirect request to show confidence through an elegant economy of language.
So we really want to encourage you to take these specific phrases and these mental strategies and integrate them. Write them down, practice them, simulate the conversations in your head. Understand the effect of your word choice.
And remember, proficiency is a journey. Every single interaction is a new chance to practice and to work towards mastery.
And that brings us to the close of today's deep dive. We really hope this has given you some robust tools, both linguistic and psychological, to walk into your next high-stakes conversation with, genuine poise and authority and ease.
And as we close out, let's leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over, which builds on our focus today on vulnerability and inhibition.
Thinking about your own communication journey. In which specific social scenario? Is it professional? Is it academic? Is it just a casual chat with a stranger? In which one do you personally find yourself most inhibited?
And what specific high-level phrase from our deep dive today, maybe it's I'm slightly apprehensive, or maybe it's just I can't complain, what phrase might help mitigate that anxiety and unlock a new kind of connection for you?
Reflect on that scenario. Commit to trying that one phrase this week and just observe what happens.
It's through that conscious, deliberate application that fluency really does solidify into true mastery.
Until next time, keep challenging your limits.
Goodbye for now. Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we take complex source material and really extract the actionable insights you need to move from curious observer to true master. Today, we are laser focused on, the highest tier of language acquisition, C2 fluency.
Right.
And this isn't about learning basic grammar or, survival phrases. This is about achieving total psychological and linguistic integration.
We're addressing a very specific and often incredibly frustrating challenge for advanced learners.
Yes.
If you're listening, you are likely already competent. Your grammar is sound. You can probably articulate some really complex philosophical or technical ideas.
Sure.
But you're seeking that final, subtle polish, that last step that makes you sound not just competent, but effortless.
That's the word.
Effortless.
And that journey from, say, a high B2 competence to a true C2 mastery, it often feels like hitting a wall.
Absolutely. We've spent previous deep dives focusing on the external stuff, social scenarios like the office, the classroom, public speaking tactics.
Today, we are shifting our focus entirely inward. We're looking at the internal landscape.
Your mental game.
The mental game, exactly. The psychological and even neurological barriers that are the true inhibitors of advanced proficiency, regardless of how many vocabulary lists you've memorized.
That's so right.
Yeah.
Because for a C2 candidate, your performance errors, they're rarely because you just don't know something.
No.
They stem from performance pressure, from cognitive load, or from these deeply ingrained, you could call them fossilized, linguistic habits.
Habits you picked up when you were a beginner.
Exactly, when you were a far less advanced learner. So our mission today is pretty comprehensive. We want to analyze how advanced learners can practically mitigate those symptoms of social anxiety before they even speak.
Okay.
And then we'll address those subtle linguistic fossilized errors and pragmatic pitfalls that just stubbornly persist and, they undermine your perceived fluency.
Because honestly, all the passive knowledge in the world, that massive vocabulary, those perfect grammar rules, it won't help you if your brain just locks up the second you feel the pressure of a live conversation.
It's useless at that point.
It is. We have to acknowledge that even the most finely tuned linguistic strategies are going to fail if that psychological barrier remains intact.
So we need to build a robust internal runway. A runway for successful, high-stakes communication. It's about optimizing the mind before you even think about optimizing the output.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start right there at that critical point of paralysis, the mental game. So the core challenge.
The foundational challenge for high-level learners is what we call the paradox of knowledge.
Paradox of knowledge, okay.
And this leads directly to cognitive paralysis. Think about it. A beginner has very few options, so they just choose one and speak.
Right. They know one way to say hello.
Exactly. But you, the C2 learner, you have too much information. You have multiple perfect synonyms, maybe 3 possible grammatical structures.
Like a simple clause, a gerund, a subordinate clause.
Countless idioms, all swirling in your mind at the same time.
And that's the moment of choice, isn't it? The brain is presented with, 8 high-level ways to express one single concept.
And then, at that exact moment, the pressure is applied. A colleague is waiting for your sophisticated response.
Yeah.
And that information overload, coupled with the inherent fear of making an error that might invalidate your advanced status, it leads to a cognitive freeze.
The hesitation isn't because you don't know the answer.
No, it's because you're running a simultaneous high-speed optimization program on too many variables at once. So the first step has to be reducing that cognitive load when you're under pressure.
And this is exactly why beginner's solutions, simple role-playing or memorizing a few core phrases, they just don't work for the advanced learner.
They're completely insufficient.
You don't need more vocabulary. What you need is precision. Precision in psychological and neurological refinement. You need a system that lets your existing high-level knowledge come out instantly and reliably.
So let's start with the first pillar of that system, cognitive rehearsal.
Okay.
Now, on the surface, this strategy, it sounds deceptively basic. We're talking about practicing aloud, maybe to your reflection in a mirror.
It sounds a bit like something you do for a school play.
It does, but the neurological benefit we are targeting here is profound and very specific to performance optimization.
So it's not about checking if your hair looks good.
Definitely not. It's about creating neural pathways that bypass that moment of agonizing choice. If you consistently vocalize full, complex, register-appropriate phrases,
Meaning sophisticated sentences for a high-level situation.
precisely, you are essentially pre-caching the production sequence.
You're loading it up ahead of time.
Yes. We are talking about rehearsing language that actually matches your C2 ambition. So this means practicing out loud. Good morning, how are matters proceeding with the Q2 projections?
Not just how are you.
No. Or if we were to pivot our approach to the quarterly filing, what ethical and logistical impact would that have on the regional sales team? The sophistication has to be high.
So the crucial element here is bridging that gap between passive knowledge and active knowledge.
That's the whole game.
Because the advanced learner often knows the word when they hear it, that's passive, but they struggle to just spontaneously deploy it. That's the active part.
And the repetition in cognitive rehearsal, it specifically strengthens the production pathways in the brain. When you read something, the linguistic processing centers for comprehension are active. Wernicke's area.
Right, the understanding part.
But when you produce speech, the centers for motor execution and planning take over. Broca's area and the primary motor cortex.
So you're actually exercising the speaking part of your brain.
You're strengthening the physical articulation and the motor planning for those specific complex phrases. It becomes more automatic.
And the mirror, or I guess recording yourself on your phone, that serves a specific purpose too, right? Desensitization.
That's a huge part of it. For so many learners, just hearing their own voice, articulating complex ideas in a non-native language, it triggers this intense moment of self-consciousness.
Oh yeah, that little internal cringe.
Yet momentary panic that can lead to performance regression. You suddenly sound like a B1 learner again.
So by repeatedly exposing yourself to the sound of your own voice, delivering this high-level speech.
You normalize the experience. You make it boring for your brain.
I like that.
And this significantly reduces the cognitive load during a live situation. The brain recognizes the pattern, it minimizes that self-monitoring function, and it allows for much more rapid retrieval.
Okay, but here's a question. Doesn't this risk sounding overly rehearsed? Bit robotic? That's a huge concern for someone aiming for natural conversation.
That's an excellent challenge, and it's a critical point. The key is to rehearse the structures and the intonation patterns, not a word-for-word script.
Ah, okay. The framework, not the exact words.
The framework. For example, rehearse the structure for disagreeing politely. I understand the rationale, but I see a fundamental issue with X, Y, and Z. You plug in the variables later in the real conversation.
So the muscle memory we're building
Is for the rhythm and the syntax. It ensures that the complex framework for your C2 level idea is retrieved instantly, leaving your cognitive energy free to focus on the content and the unpredictable parts of the conversation.
So you pay the cognitive cost of formulating that complex sentence structure in private, which frees up all your mental resources for the spontaneous interaction when it really matters.
That's it. That instant retrieval is the difference between effortless fluency and that stuttered, hesitant response that just screams uncertainty.
Okay, so this is where it gets, for me, really interesting. We're moving from the abstract psychological prep to the hard biology that underpins performance.
Yes.
Let's talk about the body's role in linguistic failure. Because anxiety, especially linguistic anxiety, is fundamentally a somatic experience. It's physical.
And this critical connection is where most language learners, even advanced ones, completely miss the mark.
How so?
When you feel that pressure, your sympathetic nervous system kicks in. It initiates the fight or flight response.
Classic response. Heart races, muscles tense.
Breathing becomes shallow, all driven by a rush of adrenaline and cortisol. Biologically, your body is prioritizing immediate survival. And what's one of the first systems to get deprioritized when you're fleeing a predator?
Let me guess. High-level, energy-intensive brain function.
Exactly. Specifically, the specialized language centers, the parts responsible for lexical retrieval and fine motor articulation, forming the words with your mouth, they get throttled.
So the resources are literally being redirected to your legs to run, and your ability to pull out that perfect niche synonym just evaporates.
It's gone. And the source material is very clear that simply telling someone to calm down at this point is physiologically useless. We need a biological override.
We need to flip a switch in the body.
A physical necessity. And the simple, often cited advice to breathe is actually a profound biological intervention. We're talking about diaphragmatic breathing.
Deep, slow belly breaths.
Yes. And this mechanism is so critical because it directly stimulates the vagus nerve.
Okay, the vagus nerve, I've heard of this. It's the 10th cranial nerve, sometimes called the grand communicator.
That's right. It's a massive nerve that runs from the brainstem through your neck, your chest, and all the way down into the abdomen. It directly impacts your heart rate, your digestion, your stress response, everything.
It's the central pathway of the parasympathetic nervous system, right? The rest and digest system.
The calming system. So when you take a deliberate, deep, slow breath that expands your abdomen, you're applying this gentle, controlled pressure to the vagus nerve.
And that sends a signal.
It sends a specific, powerful signal right back up to your brain.
What is that signal saying? What's the message?
The message is critical and biologically fundamental. It says, we are safe. Heart rate can decrease. We are not under threat. We are simply having a conversation.
So you're tricking your own biology.
You're hijacking it for your own benefit. This controlled physiological shift reverses the adrenaline response. Cortisol levels, and the brain redirects its resources back to the prefrontal cortex, the center for executive function, planning, and, critically for us, complex linguistic retrieval.
So before you even utter a single syllable in that high-stakes meeting or that spontaneous networking event, taking just 2 or 3 of these deep diaphragmatic breaths isn't just about feeling a little bit calmer.
No, it's not a feeling. It's a biochemical process.
You are physically and biochemically unlocking your linguistic capabilities. You're forcing your body out of performance panic and back into a state where you can actually access all that C2 knowledge you have.
We can even provide actionable techniques here. You could try box breathing, which is often used by military personnel. You inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 4, and hold empty for 4.
A simple cycle.
Very simple. Or the 4-7-8 method. Inhale through your nose for 4, hold for 7, and then exhale audibly through your mouth for 8. Performing this just once or twice before you raise your hand in a discussion. It's the physiological prerequisite for successful, fluent communication.
Without that, your retrieval system is basically being bottlenecked by stress hormones, no matter how vast your vocabulary truly is.
Exactly. You're fighting your own body.
Let's move to the psychological barrier that I think plagues C2 learners the most. It's a form of self-sabotage.
Oh, absolutely.
You know the rules so well that you are terrified of violating them. The pursuit of C2 perfection becomes the great inhibitor. We need to dismantle this myth of perfection.
This myth leads directly to freezing. Advanced learners often confuse linguistic ability with their moral worth.
Wow, that's a strong way to put it.
It is, but it's true. They feel that a misplaced preposition or a slightly non-native intonation invalidates their entire level of competence.
Especially in a professional environment.
Right, where they expect flawless output from themselves. And this internal judgment is always harsher than any external assessment could ever be.
So we need to establish a critical foundational distinction for advanced learners. And that is the difference between absolute accuracy
and authentic connection.
Explain that.
When you're interacting with someone, a colleague, a client, a new acquaintance, they are rarely engaging in a real-time, high-speed grammatical analysis of your speech.
Their brain isn't sitting there checking your subjunctive usage.
Of course not. They are gauging your intent, your engagement, and your capacity to maintain social rapport. Did you convey warmth? Did you communicate your idea with conviction? Did you make a connection?
This leads to some truly counterintuitive advice for C2 speakers. The idea that if you stumble over a tricky subordinate clause or briefly use the wrong article, but you maintain strong, confident eye contact, express genuine enthusiasm, and maintain that warmth, the interaction is still a success.
It's a fundamental success. The human brain is incredibly forgiving of minor linguistic errors when the social signaling, the body language, the tone, the engagement is strong.
The source material argues pretty powerfully that vulnerability is often far more charismatic than robotic perfection.
That's a perfect way to put it. Think about a speaker who is slightly imperfect, but is clearly focused on the meaning and the relationship. They're relatable.
They're human.
They're human. They show they're prioritizing the message over the mechanism. Now, contrast that with someone who speaks flawlessly but sounds stiff, hesitant, or detached because they're mentally translating every word and focusing only on syntax.
The latter creates distance. It feels cold.
It creates a wall.
I'm reminded of an anecdote about a high-level executive from a German company speaking English. He was in a tense negotiation and accidentally used a double negative when trying to emphasize a point.
Okay.
Not grammatically correct at all, but the force of his conviction, combined with this momentary self-deprecating smile he gave, it actually broke the tension in the room. It made him seem more human and, weirdly, more trustworthy.
That is the power of focusing on connection over accuracy. A minor slip-up signals that you're operating at speed, that you are fluent enough to sometimes trip over your own thoughts, just like a native speaker does.
That's a great reframe. A mistake isn't a sign of failure, it's a sign of speed.
We have to reassure you, the listener, that native speakers make slips of the tongue constantly. It's an intrinsic part of high-speed human speech production. So in the context of an advanced learner, a minor error is actually a sign of operational fluency.
It means you're in the game.
You're speaking quickly enough that your cognitive load sometimes exceeds your motor control. So you need to encourage self-kindness. You're aiming for communication mastery, not flawless execution in a sterile lab setting.
Okay, that transition is key. We've now successfully addressed the internal operating system. We've calmed the nerves with biology. We've unlocked cognitive resources through rehearsal. And we've given ourselves permission to be imperfectly human.
The engine is running smoothly now.
Exactly. So now we can focus on refining the final output. Because even with perfect underlying knowledge and a calm mind, certain linguistic habits can persist.
And these are the fossilized errors.
Right.
They're linguistic habits, often simple and efficient ones you learn back at the B1 or B2 stage, that resist correction even when you've mastered the advanced rules.
Why do they stick around?
Because they require less cognitive effort. The brain is lazy, it prioritizes speed and efficiency, so it falls back on the old, easy pathway. And these errors, while technically minor, are often the very markers that signal to a native speaker that you're still a learner, however advanced.
And we're not talking about simple grammar mistakes here. These are pragmatic pitfalls.
Yes. Errors in social usage. Errors in the unspoken rules of discourse, of register, and cultural appropriateness.
So mastering C2 is really about polishing the social machinery of the language. It's about shedding those overly formal or overly literal habits that were instilled by your early learning.
Pragmatics is where true C2 mastery resides. It's using the right language in the right context, understanding the implicit meaning, and knowing how to navigate social discourse efficiently and warmly. So let's start with the classic, the most enduring fossilized error of them all.
I think I know where you're going with this.
Responding to "how are you" or "how are things going" with the literal textbook answer,
I am fine. Yes, I am fine.
it's grammatically flawless. Technically correct. Every beginner learns this on day one. But when an advanced speaker uses it habitually, it creates this immediate social disconnect. It really does. It signals social detachment, formality, or even emotional distance. In most English-speaking contexts, professional or casual "I am fine" tends to just shut down the communication flow.
It's a conversation stopper.
It is. It suggests you're not interested in continuing the exchange, or maybe that you're overly guarded. It's just too definite, too sterile.
So the advanced learner's goal here is to deploy more colloquial, lower register phrases that show social ease and linguistic integration.
You want to signal that you are not mentally translating a textbook answer. You want variety, social nuance, and an implied comfort level. So let's contrast the fluent alternatives and really analyze their specific registers.
Okay, so instead of "I am fine," the standard socially smooth default is probably just "I'm good, thanks."
Simple, efficient, warm, highly functional. That's your go-to.
Then you have options that convey a bit more nuance. What about not too bad?
Ah, a classic piece of English understatement. It implies a kind of grounded realism. Things are okay, but you're not claiming excessive, unbelievable joy.
And it kind of invites a mild follow-up, doesn't it? Like, oh,
Yeah,
everything okay, which is great for keeping the conversation going.
exactly. Then I particularly like pretty good, all things considered.
Ooh, I like that one. It adds a touch of self-reflection and maybe some humor. It feels slightly elevated, but still casual.
And it signals fluency because you're using an idiomatic chunk, all things considered.
Right.
And then, as mentioned in the source material, the highly idiomatic, super efficient option. Can't complain.
This one is so interesting.
It is. It's not just a statement of being okay. It's a cultural acknowledgement that the baseline expectation of life is tolerable without demanding excessive attention.
It's efficient, a bit self-deprecating, and very socially smooth, especially in professional contexts where being overly cheerful might feel a little fake.
And think about the implications. Imagine you're in a job interview. The interviewer starts with, "How are you today?" If you say, "I am fine," you've just put up a subtle wall. It implies rigidity.
But if you respond, "I'm great, thanks, really glad to be here," or "a bit busy this week, but can't complain,"
You immediately sound more integrated, more relaxed, and more confident in that environment.
the ability to vary your response based on the social temperature, that really is a hallmark of C2 mastery.
It's the difference between merely understanding a phrase and understanding its social function. These alternatives keep the social machinery moving smoothly. They turn that initial formality into a genuine, if brief, moment of connection.
This brings us perfectly to the second major pragmatic pitfall, which is almost universally encouraged by academic requirements, but sounds so pedantic in real life.
Yes.
The overuse of full sentences.
Oh, this is a big one. Standardized language exams often heavily reward complex grammatical structures and complete, fully formed thoughts.
Right. They want you to show off what you know.
And this unintentionally trains the high-level learner to be verbose, to be repetitious, to make sure every subject and verb is explicitly stated in every response, but in fast-paced, real-life discourse.
It sounds unnatural, formal, robotic even.
Completely robotic. If I ask you, "Is the report due this afternoon?" and you reply, "Yes, the report is due this afternoon."
It's jarring. It's really jarring.
That repetition violates the core principle of advanced communication, which is the economy of language.
Economy of language. So maximizing meaning while minimizing words.
Exactly. The advanced speaker understands that most of the information has already been established by the context. Therefore, the response should rely heavily on brevity and ellipsis.
And for those unfamiliar, ellipsis is just the deliberate omission of words that are grammatically required, but can be easily inferred by the listener from the context.
You assume shared knowledge. It's a huge challenge for speakers coming from languages that are less tolerant of ellipsis or that rely heavily on explicit subject pronouns. Some languages require the subject and the main verb to be repeated.
But a fluent English speaker seeks the shortest possible response that maintains clarity.
Always. So let's revisit that example. Instead of the unnatural, repetitive, "Yes, the report is due this afternoon," the natural advanced response uses ellipsis and short auxiliary answers.
Okay, so the core function is replacing the repeated parts, the subject, the main verb, with the corresponding auxiliary verb.
That's the mechanism. So if the question is, "Did you finish the report?" the fluent answer is,
Yes, I did.
exactly. The auxiliary did stands in for the whole phrase, "finish the report." If the question is in the present perfect, have they already arrived?
No, they haven't.
And if a modal verb is used, will he join us for lunch?
Yes, he will.
These short auxiliary answers, "Yes, it is," "No, I didn't," "They might," "I would," these are the true hallmarks of C2 conversation efficiency.
They show you don't just know the grammar rules, but you also understand the social contract of English discourse, which really values efficiency and conciseness.
The source material explicitly states this. Short answers are not rude. They are a sign of sophistication. They're efficient. You're signaling to your conversation partner that you're not translating or overprocessing. You're operating on native speakers' terms, responding naturally to the underlying grammar.
And mastering this principle must save immense cognitive energy for later in the conversation, for when you really need it to articulate complex, novel ideas.
Absolutely. You save your brain power for the heavy lifting.
Now we need to move beyond those foundational pitfalls into some more sophisticated pragmatic errors, the kind that only truly affect C2 learners who are, well, trying a little too hard to sound polite or cautious.
Right. Our next pitfall is the over-reliance on hedging devices.
Hedging devices. So words like I guess, sort of, kind of, maybe.
Exactly. Now, they are crucial for politeness in many situations, but over-relying on them, especially when you're expressing a professional opinion, it completely undercuts the C2 speaker's perceived confidence and authority.
I see this all the time. The advanced learner uses these words as a safety net. It's a way to avoid being completely wrong or sounding too direct.
Yes, but if every statement is padded with, I guess this is sort of the right way, you dilute the power of your own message.
It sounds like you don't believe in what you're saying.
It does. Consider a presentation or a meeting where you're asked for an assessment. A B2 learner might struggle just to form the sentence, but a C2 learner might say, well, I guess we could sort of pursue that strategy, maybe, if we kind of think about the budget.
The grammar is perfect, but the message is so tentative. It lacks all conviction.
So what are the C2 alternatives that maintain politeness but also project confidence?
Good question.
The fluent response is to replace those weak hedges with language that mitigates impact without sacrificing certainty.
Great, an example.
Instead of, I guess, try, it appears that, or based on the data, I would suggest. If you absolutely must express uncertainty, use precise language for it. Say, there's a marginal possibility that it might sort of happen.
So the goal isn't to be blunt or overly assertive. It's to be precise about your level of commitment.
Exactly. The overuse of vague hedges makes your sophisticated ideas sound provisional. It cheapens the impact of your advanced knowledge. The next pitfall arises when learners lift high-register vocabulary directly from academic papers or formal business reports and then try to deploy it in casual conversation.
The misuse of formal connectors.
You see this when someone uses words like furthermore, moreover, consequently, or hence, when they're just chatting over lunch or during informal small talk with colleagues.
Right. While technically correct, the word choice creates this really awkward distance.
It does. If I ask you about your weekend plans and you say, I am visiting my sister, furthermore, I need to buy groceries.
The conversation suddenly feels like a court deposition.
Right. Those words belong in written analysis or formal persuasive essays where they clearly demarcate complex logical arguments. They're signposts for a formal structure.
So how does a C2 speaker signal transition and logical flow in a more casual, integrated way?
We rely on simpler, more flexible transitional phrases and interjections. Instead of furthermore, just use also or and then, or even just a brief pause followed by the next thought.
And instead of consequently,
use so or that means.
This connects right back to the principle of economy of language, doesn't it?
Perfectly. Casual communication relies on short, familiar transitions that don't demand too much cognitive energy from the listener. The fluent speaker chooses the connective that fits the register.
So if you're debating a policy decision, sure, use moreover.
Yes, but if you're discussing last night's game, use plus or and also. This is a really nuanced area because the speaker must have an innate feel for the sociolinguistic context to make the right choice.
And using highly formal language in casual settings just makes you sound like you're translating directly from a style guide, not participating naturally in the social exchange.
It marks you as an outsider, ironically, even though you're using very advanced vocabulary.
Our final, and you could argue most subtle, pragmatic pitfall relates to tonal mismatch. Specifically, the degree of directness used in commands or requests.
This is deeply cultural and often causes the most friction for advanced speakers.
I believe it.
Many language learning environments emphasize clear, direct command structures. For instance, the B2 request might be, I need the report by 3 p.m. or give me the file.
Grammatically perfect.
But in many English-speaking professional environments, that level of directness can be perceived as abrupt, rude, or even aggressive.
And that perception is a classic example of a pragmatic pitfall. The error isn't in the syntax. It's in violating the cultural rule that requires you to soften requests, especially in hierarchical settings.
The C2 speaker understands the absolute necessity of mitigation using linguistic devices to reduce the imposition of the request.
So this means substituting blunt commands with questions, using modal verbs, adding polite fillers.
All of the above. Let's analyze that transition from direct to mitigated. Instead of, I need the report by 3 p.m., the fluent C2 professional might say,
Something like, would it be possible to get the report by 3 p.m.? If not, please let me know.
Notice the layers of mitigation there. We moved from an assertion, I need, to a conditional question, would it be possible? And then we added a buffer phrase, if not, which creates an out for the other person.
It gives them agency.
It does. Or take the simple instruction, give me the file. The C2 response involves multiple levels of softening, like,
Could you possibly pass over the file when you have a free moment?
yes. You use the modal could, the intensifier possibly, and the contextual softener when you have a free moment.
Mastery here is really about recognizing that high-level English discourse often operates on indirectness, especially when you're managing relationships.
And the C2 speaker has to consciously override the instinct for just grammatical efficiency and embrace this linguistic cushioning. You have to understand that social harmony often trumps brevity in these specific contexts, and that attention to mitigation is a reliable signal of high integration and cultural sophistication.
So we have completed a pretty comprehensive deep dive today. We started by tackling the internal operating system, moving from the psychology of managing deep-seated performance nerves to the specific mechanics of physiological regulation. Then we shifted to the external, refining output by addressing those fossilized habits across greetings, structural efficiency, and the really complex nuances of register management.
And the key takeaway is that the journey from B2 confidence to C2 fluency is less about acquiring massive amounts of new knowledge and far more about optimizing the performance and deployment of the knowledge you already possess, both psychologically and linguistically. It's about removing the friction points.
Let's review the critical, actionable shifts you should internalize immediately. This is your playbook for turning theory into practice, starting with your very next high-stakes interaction.
First, preparation. Pillar 1. Integrate cognitive rehearsal. Focus on strengthening the production pathways of complex, full sentences and idiomatic structures in private. Pay close attention to intonation to reduce that cognitive load during live communication.
Second, regulation. Pillar 2. Use physiological regulation. Before a demanding conversation, engage in diaphragmatic breathing, like the 4-7-8 method, to stimulate the vagus nerve, reverse the fight-or-flight response, and unlock access to your high-level language centers.
Third, mindset. Pillar 3. Abandon the myth of perfection. Shift your focus from that paralyzing concern over minor grammatical errors accuracy to maximizing genuine human connection and conveying clear intent. Remember, vulnerability is charismatic.
Fourth, greeting. Pitfall 1. Abandon the fossilized I am fine. Shift to more colloquial, connection-oriented responses like I'm good, not too bad, or can't complain, making sure to match the response to the social register.
Fifth, efficiency. Pitfall 2. Employ the principle of economy of language. Instead of repetitive full sentences, use short auxiliary answers, yes, I did, no, it isn't, to demonstrate native-level structural understanding and efficiency.
Sixth, authority. Pitfall 3. Minimize those weak hedging devices like I guess or sort of when expressing professional opinions. Substitute them with confident, precise, mitigating language like it appears that.
Seventh, register. Pitfall 4. Avoid using overly formal connectors like furthermore or consequently in casual conversation. Choose smooth, lower register transitions like also and so.
And finally, eighth, mitigation. Pitfall 5. When making requests, practice tonal mitigation. Avoid overly direct commands and instead use questions and polite buffers like, would it be possible to? And my advice would be to treat your next conversation, whether it's with a stranger or your boss, not as a test to pass, but as an experiment to run.
Oh, that's a great frame.
Try the diaphragmatic breathing. Try using not too bad, and just see how your interlocutor responds. Actively notice the reduction in your own internal stress and the difference in the quality of the connection you make. Every conversation is a vital data point, helping you inch closer to complete, effortless mastery.
This transformation is subtle, it's cumulative, and it is so highly rewarding. You're already advanced. Now you just need to grant yourself the psychological and linguistic tools to speak with complete freedom and confidence. And it's worth reiterating, even the most articulate orator began with a single, trembling syllable.
Thank you so much for taking this deep dive with us today into the critical nuances of C2 fluency. We hope these detailed strategies give you the immediate edge you need to feel more comfortable and sound more natural in your high-level interactions.
We covered how using short, economical language demonstrates that you understand the implied meaning and context. And this reliance on implicit knowledge raises an important question for you, the listener, to mull over. How does the practice of economy of language change not just what you choose to say, but how quickly and accurately you process what others leave unsaid?
Think about that. Your own efficiency becomes a key to unlocking the efficiency of others. A fantastic concept to explore in your own journey. Keep practicing, keep refining, and as always,
Keep learning. Goodbye for now.
welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take complex source material, research papers, detailed notes, cultural blueprints, and we try to distill them into, well, truly actionable knowledge.
Exactly.
And today, we're tackling a really critical area of social competence. It's one of those things that I think often gets overlooked in typical language training.
Yeah.
We're talking about the final stages of social discourse.
It's fascinating material. I mean, we all spend so much energy trying to perfect the introduction, right? The icebreaker, the handshake, that first line.
Oh, absolutely. The opening.
But these sources, they provide a sophisticated, almost a surgical manual for what comes after that. For C2, proficiency level social interaction.
Right. It's about managing the conversation once it's actually up and running. And that's really the core of it, isn't it? You shared material with us that feels like, I don't know, a shortcut to being not just technically correct with your grammar, but socially fluent.
Fluent is the perfect word.
So the mission for this deep dive is, I think, pretty clear. We need to equip you, the listener, with the tools to handle the flow, the maintenance, and crucially, the dignified conclusion of any interaction.
Precisely. And we're really focusing on two critical elements here. These are the things that fundamentally separate a highly competent speaker from someone who is truly deeply fluent.
Okay, what are they?
First is conversational continuity. So that's the ability to keep the conversation alive without those awkward lulls.
That dead air.
Yeah. And second, the art of the graceful exit, which is all about managing your departure without sacrificing politeness or, your professional standing.
And the challenge, as the material puts it, is universal. I mean, we've all been there. So many people can start a dialogue, but then they hit that brick wall of silence like 3 minutes later.
Right.
They master the initial engine start, but they just don't know how to keep the car moving down the road. And that leads to that universally dreaded feeling of being, I don't know, rude or checked out or...
Just boring, which might be the worst of all.
It's exactly.
And that analogy from the sources is just spot on. Starting the engine is only half the battle. You need to keep the car moving. The moment you let that engine stall, that sudden silence, you're introducing conversational risk.
What kind of risk?
The risk of misinterpretation. Specifically, the misinterpretation of disinterest. And in a high-stakes social or professional setting, that can be absolutely fatal to building rapport.
So our goal for you is to move beyond mere grammar. This isn't about verb tenses. This is about strategy. It's about giving you the specific phrases and frameworks to not only sustain a dialogue smoothly, but to manage the eventual departure with sophistication and really with absolute confidence.
And that sophistication is the key. True fluency isn't just about having a big vocabulary or perfect syntax. It's about mastering the unwritten rules of engagement.
The hidden rules.
The hidden rules. These are the rules that dictate perception. So this deep dive, it's going to reveal the specific, non-obvious formulas, the social algorithms, if you will, used predominantly in British and American conversational culture. We're focusing entirely on the hidden mechanics of flow management.
All right, let's jump straight into it then. Section 1, maintaining momentum. This is where we confront the danger of conversational silence head on.
Let's do it.
So in the flow of any dialogue, a vacuum of silence is, well, it's a liability.
Yeah.
When you let that natural lull happen, the other party really only has a couple of options for interpreting it. Either you have nothing left to say.
Or, as the material puts it, worse, a lack of interest.
Exactly. And if you're networking or you're trying to build a professional relationship, allowing that perception to take root is it's catastrophic.
It is a killer. And what the sources make so clear is that momentum is not self-sustaining. It doesn't just happen. You have to actively work to maintain that flow.
So what's the tool? What's the strategy?
The core strategic tool for this kind of active maintenance is what researchers call active listening strategies, and specifically a technique called back channeling.
Back channeling.
Yep.
That sounds technical, but it's something we all do subconsciously,
Yeah.
right? So what's the technical definition here, and why do we need to consciously focus on it?
Well, you're right. We do it subconsciously, but often poorly. Back channeling refers to the continuous flow of signals you give to the speaker that explicitly confirm your engagement and your understanding.
So like nodding, making eye contact.
Exactly. The verbal and the nonverbal cues, the nodding, the engaged eye contact, and those small verbal interjections that prove you are tracking their narrative in real time. It's the continuous feedback loop that tells a speaker, keep going, I am with you.
And this is where that C2 or high-level proficiency requirement becomes so critical.
Yeah.
Most people, myself included, probably think they're doing enough by just, nodding along or inserting a yes or an uh-huh.
Right.
So why are those basic affirmations deemed insufficient or even passive at a high level of discourse?
They're insufficient because they demand almost no cognitive effort. They're basically the linguistic equivalent of breathing. You do them without thinking.
Huh.
For a C2 speaker, the standard has to be higher. When you use those simple reflexive affirmations, you signal to the speaker that you are merely waiting. You're waiting for them to finish so you can take your turn.
Wow. Okay. So you're not actually absorbing what they're saying.
You're not genuinely absorbing or processing the emotional or the intellectual weight of what they're saying. You're just waiting for the pause.
So the goal is to shift from being a passive recipient of information to being an active validator of their experience.
Exactly. The material instructs us to upgrade the signal substantially, and the core technique is the strategic use of what are called evaluative adjectives.
Evaluative adjectives, okay.
And they're designed to validate the speaker's emotion. You have to stop commenting on the surface facts of their story and start commenting on the deep texture of their statement.
Let's dive into the practical application of this, because this is where the actionable knowledge really is. We need to show how using a specific, strong adjective can replace that passive nodding and instead acknowledge the deep emotional context.
Let's do it. Let's start with a negative context. This is example 1. Imagine a colleague is recounting a difficult project they just finished. A massive logistical headache or maybe some unnecessary bureaucratic struggle.
Right, we've all been there. The TPS reports.
Exactly. Now, if your response is the generic, oh, that's too bad, or I'm sorry to hear that, you have completely failed to validate the emotional cost of their experience.
Why? It sounds polite enough.
It falls flat because it lacks sophistication and, more importantly, specificity. It's a blanket statement.
I see the difference. That's too bad. Suggests a kind of generalized pity. But if they were truly dealing with something complex and frustrating, pity isn't what they want. They want recognition. Recognition of their effort and their struggle.
Precisely. The sources advise moving beyond that generic sympathy and using strong, specific words that speak directly to the feeling the speaker is trying to convey. If they're talking about a slow, drawn-out process that felt pointless.
Like waiting for approvals from 3 different departments.
Perfect example. You need to recognize the element of time and frustration inherent in that story.
So if they describe navigating layers of pointless authorization, instead of saying, that sounds hard, I should analyze the nature of the difficulty.
Yes.
If it was slow and monotonous, I would say, that sounds utterly tedious.
Great word.
Or if it involved obstacles and blocked progress, maybe, how incredibly frustrating for you to have dealt with all that red tape.
The power of that specificity is just immense. When you use tedious, you demonstrate that you understand the sheer duration and the psychological boredom of their story.
Right.
When you use frustrating, you recognize the effort they put in that was actively being thwarted. That depth of understanding is conversational fuel.
So the speaker immediately registers, okay, they get it.
They get it. And when someone feels gotten, they naturally continue to elaborate. They'll say, oh, it was so frustrating. Let me tell you about the next part. This is how you organically extend the flow of the conversation.
That makes perfect sense. You're acknowledging their internal world, not just their external report of events.
Exactly.
Now let's flip it. Example 2, the positive context. Someone shares genuinely good news, a major client acquisition, a successful career pivot. Our reflexive response is often just.
Congratulations.
All right, congratulations.
Yeah.
But we're aiming for a C2 level here.
And congratulations is the bare minimum. It is the conversational floor. If you want high-level continuity, you need to match their positive energy with high-level adjectives that reflect the scale and the nature of their achievement.
Okay, give me an example.
Well, if they're talking about the adrenaline rush of pulling off a difficult product launch, you could say, That sounds truly exhilarating.
Exhilarating. I like that. It matches the energy.
Or if it reflects years of hard work finally paying off, something like that is incredibly impressive.
And what if you have some backstory? What if you know they had a major struggle leading up to this success? You could integrate that past context into the present evaluation.
Absolutely. That's even more advanced. Knowing what you went through to get this done, this success is absolutely well-deserved.
And that's powerful.
The distinction here is that these evaluative adjectives, whether they're addressing boredom, excitement, or difficulty, they are the engine oil for the conversation. They validate the speaker's emotional investment. And it organically encourages them to elaborate, proving you're not only fluent in grammar, but you're fluent in social and emotional dynamics.
It really is the difference between being a passive vessel for information and being an active shaping partner in the exchange.
Yes.
And once you master that, those sudden, awkward stalls, they virtually disappear because you're constantly prompting the speaker forward through this validation.
And let me just add a quick third example, which is often harder. The neutral or complex context.
Right.
Say someone is describing a new corporate initiative. It's not clearly good or bad, but it's complex and difficult to implement. The default response is, that sounds complicated.
Which is weak. I can see that now. It's a dead end.
It's weak. It shuts things down. So what should we use instead?
I guess it depends on what you want to emphasize.
Exactly. You might say, that sounds challenging, if you want to focus on the difficulty they have to overcome. Or maybe, that sounds ambitious, if you want to validate the vision behind the initiative.
Both of those words elevate the perception of the task. They show thoughtful engagement, and they prompt the person to explain the next step in the process.
Which maintains that momentum beautifully.
Okay, so we've established how to keep the flow going within a single topic. But sometimes, a conversation on topic A has just reached its natural conclusion. You need to pivot to topic B. This is another major continuity challenge.
It is.
Transitioning smoothly without sounding jarring or, rude.
This is a pivot from managing on the sentence level to managing the entire structure of the discourse. And this brings us to what the sources call the bridge technique.
I have to pause here because this technique, it sounds like something people stumble over constantly. We've all been in that moment where there's a lull and someone just blurts out a completely unrelated topic and the whole conversation it jolts.
The conversational whiplash.
Yes. So a question might be, isn't linking two concepts by an abstract idea like effort, isn't that overthinking it? Why can't I just say anyway about the schedule and move on?
That's a great challenge, and it gets right to the heart of C2 mastery. You can say anyway, but that's the aggressive approach.
Aggressive.
It signals impatience. It signals disrespect for the content that was just shared. The conversation dies because the new topic feels so abrupt, and the speaker whose topic was just dismissed feels unheard, which of course damages rapport.
So the goal of the bridge is to show respect for the existing conversation while gently guiding its trajectory.
Exactly. The solution is the deliberate construction of a contextual bridge that links the emotional or conceptual weight of the speaker's last statement to your new topic. This is true high-level discourse management because it respects the cognitive load of the previous speaker. You're not just throwing something new at them.
Okay, let's break down the mechanics. The source material details a multi-step process.
It does.
Step 1, acknowledge and validate. You have to provide closure on their last point. You need to signal to the speaker, I fully processed that, and now we can move on.
That closure is non-negotiable. If they just finished a big project, you might say, that must be a genuine relief.
Right. Or if they shared a difficult client story, I'm glad you managed to navigate that.
If you skip that validation, the speaker feels like their last thought is just left hanging in the air. It suggests you were just formulating your own response rather than actually listening to theirs.
Okay, so after you validate, then comes step 2. Pivot using a connector phrase. The source material highlights a classic, highly effective linking phrase that is almost invisible in its effectiveness. Speaking of,
let's look at the illustrative dialogue example provided in the source material again, but this time let's really deeply analyze the subtle conceptual link at play.
Okay, so Speaker A says, I finally submitted the quarterly report this morning. It was a massive effort.
Now, the unskilled listener might say, that's good, so have you looked at the next schedule yet?
Jarring. The transition is totally missing. The listener is just waiting for their turn to speak.
Exactly, but the fluent listener, using this bridge technique, responds differently.
They say, that must be a relief. Speaking of massive efforts, Have you had a chance to look at the schedule for next month?
Notice what happened there. It's so subtle. They didn't link the report topic to the schedule topic B directly. Those things aren't related.
Right. They linked the concept.
They linked the concept of massive efforts, the struggle that was just completed, to the future exertion required by the schedule, the struggle that's about to begin. The shared conceptual anchor is exertion.
And that makes the transition feel seamless and natural.
Yeah.
The analysis here is that the link is conceptual, not literal. It's like linguistic analogy building.
It is.
By using that shared concept, you minimize the feeling of abruptness, and most importantly, you maintain that conversational momentum without forcing an awkward, self-focused shift.
Let's try to deepen this with a second example, just to show how flexible this technique is. Imagine topic A is about a recent budget cut in the marketing department.
Okay, common scenario.
And the listener wants to pivot to topic B, which is developing a new product feature.
Okay, the immediate clumsy thought might be, oh, that's awful. Now about the new feature.
That's the wrong move. The bridge has to respect the conceptual weight of the first topic. And the conceptual weight of a budget cut is, well, it's constraint and the need for efficiency. Ah, okay. So if speaker A says, the budget cuts are going to force us to be extremely cautious this quarter, the listener could say, I understand that cautious approach. Speaking of constraints, they often breed creative solutions. Have we discussed how this new product feature might offer a low-cost, high-return fix?
Excellent. That's perfect. You linked constraint, which was topic A's emotional reality, to creative solutions, which is topic B's promise. You didn't just change the subject, you acknowledged the problem, and you framed the new topic as a partial solution to the existing one.
And the transition phrase, speaking of constraints, is so much smoother than, say, speaking of money.
Much smoother. And this demonstrates that high-level command because it shows the listener isn't just listening to the words, they are synthesizing the underlying problems or concepts.
Let's do one more quickly. Topic A. The speaker has just returned from an exhausting multi-city business trip.
Okay.
And topic B. The listener needs to ask them to cover an upcoming shift. A tricky one.
A very tricky one. The conceptual anchor here must be fatigue. Or maybe travel.
Okay.
So if speaker A says, I'm honestly still recovering from that red-eye flight, the listener should say, what?
Well, you start with validation. I can only imagine how draining that was. Then the bridge. On a related note, because you understand the need for efficiency and planning better than anyone right now, I wanted to quickly check your availability for the shift next Tuesday.
On a related note, that's a strong, more formal alternative to speaking of. And the conceptual link is that their recent fatigue makes them more qualified to discuss scheduling efficiency.
Yes.
That's pure rhetorical genius. It validates their experience while transitioning so smoothly. It's almost a compliment.
The overarching goal is clear. The fluent speaker is a conversational engineer. They are constantly weaving the threads of the conversation together, ensuring the new topic feels like a natural outgrowth of the old one rather than a disruption.
So we've mastered the greeting, we've maintained continuity, we've skillfully pivoted when necessary. Now we confront the final, and I think often the most stressful, act of any interaction, the dignified departure. We have to land the plane gracefully.
And this is where we shift focus entirely to the art of the graceful exit.
Why do so many people, even high-level professionals, struggle so much here? Why does that trapped feeling set in?
It's entirely psychological. It's rooted in a deep-seated cultural fear of appearing rude or disinterested or dismissive.
Right. Nobody wants to be that person.
And the fundamental mistake people make is waiting. They wait for a natural, perfect pause that, in an engaging conversation, almost never materializes.
And the result of that waiting game is what the sources call the verbal escape. That sudden, awkward, forced departure that feels like a violation of the rapport you just spent 10 minutes building.
Exactly. It's the well, see ya, and then they just bolt.
Right. So the material gives us this counterintuitive insight. You cannot rely on silence to signal the end. You must actively signal the end. And this requires a formalized, visible structure.
Yes. In professional American and British culture, there is a specific, unwritten social contract for leaving. You don't just stand up and walk away. You have to engage the pre-closing sequence.
The pre-closing sequence.
This sequence is designed to gently signal to the other party that the end is coming, often about 30 to 60 seconds before you actually depart. It manages their expectations so the departure feels anticipated, not sudden.
So let's define the rules of this sequence, because the sources are extremely clear that they are non-negotiable for a truly graceful exit. You must provide a reason and a future reference.
This leads us to the three-part formula. Every successful, sophisticated exit must contain these three elements: positive comment, plus reason for leaving, plus future interaction.
Let's dissect each of those components, and let's use the high-level phrasing that elevates the departure beyond a simple goodbye.
Let's do it.
Okay, component 1, the positive comment. This has to be a genuine validation of the conversation itself. It summarizes the enjoyment or the value you extracted from it.
This is an investment. You can't just say, "It was nice talking to you." That's too generic.
So you need to elevate the language.
Absolutely. For instance, "I've really enjoyed catching up and hearing about your team's recent success." Or, "That was a truly engaging discussion about the Q3 market trends. I actually learned a lot."
That groundwork seems crucial. You established definitively that the conversation itself was valuable.
And if the content was valuable, the recipient cannot interpret your subsequent departure as a rejection of them or the content. You've protected them.
Okay, that makes sense. Now for component 2, the reason for leaving. The sources say this is the key to politeness.
It's the ultimate test of conversational mastery. The reason must be framed around your external responsibility or time constraint, never the current lack of conversational interest.
Right, you can't say, well, I'm bored now.
Never. And we need to focus on the single most sophisticated phrase provided in the material for this.
I'm conscious of the time.
Let's contrast this. Why is "I'm conscious of the time" so infinitely superior to the more common and maybe more aggressive "gotta run"?
Gotta run is abrupt. It's self-centered. It prioritizes your urgency over the conversational rapport you've built. It's transactional and it comes across as rude.
And "I'm conscious of the time."
It is profoundly different. It implies that you are being responsible and respectful of the external commitments that govern professional life, which is a desirable trait in any colleague or contact. It frames your action not as an escape, but as responsible time management.
So the phrase acts as a subtle deflection. It justifies the departure elegantly by appealing to shared professional norms. You could say, "I'm conscious of the time and I know I need to be prepping some notes for my next session." Exactly. You're not ending the conversation because it's boring. You're ending it because you are a disciplined professional. The implication is everything. It validates the social contract, and it's polite because it attributes the departure to an external factor, the clock or your schedule, rather than an internal feeling like boredom.
Okay, that's incredibly useful. And finally, component 3, the future interaction, a soft commitment. Why is this mandatory in a high-level exit?
It all ties back to the goal of relationship building. You must leave the door open. Now, this isn't about scheduling a concrete date and time that can be too demanding or feel like pressure.
Right.
It's about signaling the desire to reconnect. Let's definitely continue this analysis later this week, or we should pick this up when the new data comes out. It's open-ended, it's non-mandatory, but it signals genuine enthusiasm. It transitions the momentum you built in the conversation into future social capital.
Now let's look at that specialized exit phrase. The one designed for high-stakes networking where managing time and maximizing positive perception is absolutely crucial.
This is truly the gold standard in professional exit lines. It's, "I don't want to monopolize your time."
That is brilliant. Let's dedicate some serious analysis to the strategic function of this phrase, it seems, inherently altruistic.
It is the appearance of pure altruism, which activates a powerful psychological principle known as reciprocity.
Reciprocity.
By using this phrase, you frame your departure not as an end to the conversation, but as a gift to the other person. You are subtly suggesting that they are so valuable, so important, that other people must surely be waiting to speak with them.
Wow.
By stepping aside, you are graciously allowing them to manage their own valuable time and network further.
So you essentially elevate the other person's status while simultaneously providing your own socially bulletproof escape route. It's a total win-win. They feel important, and you look responsible and incredibly generous.
The material calls this the height of politeness because it demonstrates a social awareness of the environment. In a crowded room, time is a limited resource. You're showing that you respect that resource, specifically theirs.
And this phrase, it's always accompanied by a physical action and validation, right? You can't just drop the line and then freeze on the spot.
Correct. The accompanying actions are what complete the sequence. You deliver the line and then you explain your next move. "I don't want to monopolize your time. I'm going to circulate a bit." That's the action. But it was absolutely fascinating hearing your perspective on the acquisition, and I'll follow up on that point.
So you validate them, you justify your need to move, to circulate, and you signal future contact.
It is a complete socially bulletproof sequence that leaves them with an overwhelmingly positive perception of you.
And it provides such a phenomenal contrast to that person who just awkwardly hovers, waiting for a chance to bolt.
Absolutely. The nervous, non-fluent speaker waits for the conversation to die. The fluent speaker actively manages and signals its dignified conclusion.
We've now completed the entire arc provided in these sources, from overcoming anxiety and mastering the greeting, through sustaining and pivoting the flow, and finally to the strategic conclusion. The overarching synthesis seems clear. Social fluency requires mastering these subtle, unwritten rules of engagement far more than it requires achieving grammatical perfection.
I would argue that a professional who has, say, 90% grammar accuracy, but can manage the entire flow of the discourse, sustaining it with evaluative adjectives, bridging topics seamlessly, and exiting gracefully, that person will be perceived as far more competent and higher level than someone with 100% grammar who struggles with these social mechanics.
So these are really the rules of the road for advanced rapport.
They are.
That brings us directly to application. We can't just intellectualize these concepts, we have to apply them immediately. What is the practical takeaway for you, the listener, to apply this week to really cement these strategies?
I recommend highly focused implementation. For continuity, commit to eliminating the phrase, "That's interesting," entirely from your vocabulary.
Cold turkey.
Cold turkey. Force yourself to use one new specific evaluative adjective per conversation this week, whether it's tedious, ambitious, or exhilarating. Force yourself to validate the emotion, not just the fact. This will start to rewire your listening habits.
And on the exit side of things,
practice one of the pre-closing sequences in low-stakes settings, exiting a simple phone call, a coffee chat with a friend, or a team meeting online. Make the phrase, "I'm conscious of the time," feel second nature. Practice pairing it with a specific external reason, even if that reason is just making a cup of tea. It's the habit of structuring the departure that really matters.
and we need to explicitly connect this back to C2 mastery one final time. Why do these techniques, when used together, confirm such a high-level command of the language and culture?
Because they demonstrate that you are managing the discourse for both participants, not just for yourself. When you use the bridge technique, you respect the previous speaker's investment while you introduce your new topic. When you use the graceful exit, you protect the recipient's feelings, ensuring they don't feel dismissed. And you protect your own image as a disciplined, respectful individual.
So it's about social lubrication.
This commitment to smooth social lubrication, to managing the entire social environment, is the ultimate marker of advanced social competence.
The elegance of these linguistic formulas is truly impressive when you break them down. They're like the non-visible scaffolding of every successful high-stakes interaction we witness.
Well said.
All right, let's quickly recap the specific key phrases that we highly recommend you, the listener, internalize and adopt immediately. Move them from passive recognition to active vocabulary.
Let's do it.
First, to maintain continuity and validate emotion, moving beyond mere sympathy. That sounds frustrating and tedious.
Second, to pivot topics seamlessly while respecting the previous conversation's cognitive load. Speaking of, or its slightly more formal cousin, on a related note.
Third, the respectful, professionally minded reason for departure that frames you as responsible and in demand. I am conscious of the time.
And fourth, the ultimate networking exit, the one that frames your departure as a generous favor to them, leveraging the principle of reciprocity. I don't want to monopolize your time.
That covers the complete blueprint for sustaining and strategically ending high-level dialogue.
And that leads us to the final thought we want to leave you with, and it builds directly on that final component of the graceful exit. We've established that the successful exit often depends on providing a future reference, a soft, non-committal promise to reconnect.
Right. Let's continue this later. That keeps the door open. It translates the positive social momentum you built into potential future capital, whether it's professional or personal.
And the key, as we said, is that this promise must signal genuine enthusiasm without requiring immediate, concrete scheduling.
So it can't feel like an obligation.
Exactly. So consider this. What specific, non-committal phrase can you use in that final moment to signal genuine excitement for a future connection without making a concrete, schedulable plan? Think about how social momentum, built up through all these sophisticated techniques, can be transformed into actionable professional currency through just the right final line, a line that signals, "I truly value this connection and look forward to the next time," yet provides total scheduling freedom for both of you. That is the final piece of rhetorical finesse required for mastering the art of the graceful exit.